So, what have we left out before we get into like application?
We haven't talked about like increased metabolic rate or increased metabolic function.
Decrease in appetite is one of those things that happens. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. You have that increase in heart rate that comes with the ingestion of nicotine, which can lead to increased metabolic rate. There was something that I was reading about that it's actually pro-oxidative. So it actually could potentially increase oxidation, which we generally think is bad, but it's in a form, now I'm losing it in my head, but it's in a pathway that is actually anti-inflammatory. And in that way, it can actually aid fat burning. There was a few things, I'm getting it mixed up here, but there was a fat burning component, increased lipolysis or increased fat burning came up in what I was reading about. But yeah, there could be potential, leaning out effects of nicotine.
Yeah.
Which is kind of similar to caffeine. Again, that was where I was drawing some parallels there.
Again, we don't want to get too deep into like what could happen and, what are the downstream effects, like causation and correlation type of things. But when you go back to, we talked about from a cardiorespiratory perspective, there is this up-oxygenation of the hemoglobin, which is your oxygen-carrying red blood cells, right, in the system. So how does that impact your ability to do lots of different things, right? And again, CeCe already touched on, the studies that have gone on, particularly with endurance athletes, and there's really not a lot of I don't think there's really any consistent empirical evidence that says that it increases, your endurance properties. However, you could, based on what we just said in terms of oxygen carrying capability of your hemoglobin, could there be? We'll probably learn more. But to say like I do this before I go out and I run because it helps me, there's no science to support that, right? It could be I feel like from a cognitive perspective, I feel better, right? Like I've calmed down. There's this nociceptor response that is your pain receptors and decreasing the threshold of discomfort or pain. Could that be helpful? For sure. So, but again, to say that, using nicotine before an endurance event is helping you from a cardiorespiratory perspective, can't say that yet.
I did come across a couple of studies and they were talking about nicotine and the benefits of the performance. And one study had individuals, these were very small study sizes, and they were college-age men. And one study, the population, they were individuals who have never consumed nicotine. And then the other study was a small sample size, again, of college-age men, and they had used nicotine. And so when they looked at the performance output, the individuals that were nicotine users, when they consumed nicotine, they were able to go longer. Time to exhaustion was longer, but really as far as their performance, as far as like metrics, there was no change.
Right.
And then as far as the individuals that have never used nicotine, that didn't impact them at all from a physical performance. So the individuals that have used nicotine, it did help them.
They had that mental edge potentially, but not a physical edge.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's interesting for me because when I think through that, so one, I want to say like, I think the point, even though it's not showing, and with that's a perfect example of it's not showing actual performance increases, but I feel like for me, a lot of endurance training, and obviously you can speak to this, is very much the mental game.
It's heady. Yeah.
So I think
it's increased motivation.
Exactly. So if
dopamine pathways potentially go.
Perfect. Yeah. So, if it changes like that mindset around that, half the time I get tired of running or something like that is more because I'm bored and don't want to keep running. It's not like I'm
not a physical thing.
Exactly. For sure. So I think I could definitely see benefits there. And I thought about even like my usage of nicotine. It's almost like maybe the people who are non-users, it's such like this foreign feeling that they almost don't know how to recognize like how to be okay with it in some ways. That's why I feel like the people it's uncomfortable, right? It's a sensation that I don't really know what to do with. And I could see that kind of being a component for that study, those subjects. So
yeah, one of the other things just on that topic is we're talking about the studies, and they're generally done on male college-aged, athletes or participants in these studies. And so, look, men and women are different, right? We hands down in a lot of different ways. But what I found here, and I was just pulling it up because I wasn't exactly sure about this, but women metabolize nicotine faster than men. And then that's actually further accelerated in those taking estrogen-containing oral contraception, so birth control. However, if your menstrual cycle doesn't have any effect on it. So if you're a female, you should expect that the effects could be a little bit more intense, and the half-life of it the effects maybe last a little longer. So and then if you're on birth control, again, estrogen-derived birth control or estrogen-dominant or included birth control of some kind, that could also increase the effects of this. So I thought that was interesting too for those ladies out there that are,
I didn't come across any studies as far as regarding women.
Yeah. So this was a very short piece, very deep into the article of some of the findings that they were having. So, anyways, one of those articles. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that. So I mean, often again, we look at studies, particularly around exercise, nutrition, things like that, and they're often done with males. And there's a lot of animal studies as well, and that's where things get weird with dosages. And animals are different than humans. How much are we giving? We've had this conversation like about sucralose and some of the sugar alternatives and things like that. Like it gets a little wild, like in terms of what they're giving these animals, effectively killing them or creating cancer.
It doesn't equate to what a human would actually be consuming.
Millions of times higher than anything a human could actually consume, period, like over a lifetime. So anyways, another interesting sort of point in there. Okay, sorry.
Talked about delivery methods. Was that, what was next?
Yep. So again, we talked about delivery methods, and again, you could go subcutaneous, like through a patch. Again, that got really popular in this NRT stuff, nicotine replacement therapy, the gums and the lozenges. So you brought that up. So in the dosages, and Stephen, I think you said it's like 3 to 4 milligrams.
Yeah, I saw 2 to 4.
Something like 2 to 4 in like in the gum. Gum's a little different in terms of delivery system. Again, with regard to the human chewing it, obviously that's going to impact it. But my understanding is, and I've never used nicotine gum, but that you're supposed to chew it and park it. Not continually chew it, but chew it for a little bit and then just kind of let it
activate it and then let it just hang out in your mouth.
And almost treat it like a pouch, like almost put it like under the tongue or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people listening may have had their own experiences with it, but rather than chewing it like a regular piece of chewing gum where you're constantly working on it, certainly that could impact, if for each individual, that could impact what you're actually getting out of that. And then from the lozenges perspective, could be the same thing. How big is that lozenge? How long does it take you to get through it? Are you chewing it? Are you sucking on it? Are you parking it in there for a while? Does it take you an hour to get through it versus, getting through it in, a matter of minutes?
I wonder if the pH balance in your mouth has anything to do with how your body,
Good question.
That goes back to the individuality component.
Good question. I don't know. That's not anything I could come up with in any of the reading that I did or have done in the past.
So how your mouth environment may affect, I think like you said it in terms of, are you really hammering on the gum or are you just kind of letting it sit there, hang out? Yeah, I think that could depend on, that could create differences in terms of how you're feeling it. I think, the inhalation side of things, I think that's something that was kind of what I was thinking about as I was looking into, okay, like what's next for these nicotine like delivery systems? Like, is there something that's going to be like truly vaporized? So not an aerosol, like an e-cigarette. So if this delivery mechanism in the form of pouches is popular and now like your biohackers and like those types of people are starting to get their hands on it, are they going to want to find a method of inhalation that is safer than an e-cigarette? And then you got to think, okay, well, they're going to get a faster hit there. Does that increase the risk of addiction? So I think that we haven't talked a lot about the addiction component, which I think is probably a lot of people's concern because that's what's been drilled into our heads for so long regarding tobacco products is like, it contains evil nicotine that gets its claws in you and you'll never escape. From what I was reading, it may not be the nicotine. It's when the nicotine is actually paired with some of these other chemicals that are in cigarettes specifically. Like they've done studies where they compared, dose-equated nicotine. Typically animal studies was, I believe, what I was seeing. They've done animal studies and the addictive properties are increased when the nicotine is delivered along with these other chemicals, these other long, complicated names that are found in cigarettes versus when the nicotine is isolated. There doesn't seem to be the same addictive tendencies there. But I think that is still, the jury seems to be out there.